Hello and welcome to Science Never Stops. I'm your host Joseph Vick with the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, here with today's topic, which is Astronaut taste buds. How to taste food in space. So the first thing, we need to locate where our taste buds are, and that's on our tongues. So I encourage you to get a mirror or go to the bathroom or whatnot and look in the mirror, and take your mirror and stick your tongue out and examine your tongue. And as you're examining your tongue, you'll notice these little bumps all on the surface of your tongue. And those bumps happen to be taste buds. And there are regions on your tongue that associate with certain taste types. Now, in your journal, I recommend you draw a picture of your tongue. So I just drew a picture of my tongue, and I labeled the regions. So there are 4 or 5 major regions. We're not going to test the 5th one because a lot of people don't like that flavor. Umami, which takes up a large surface area of the middle of the tongue. But the main regions we're going to be focusing on are around the outside perimeter of the tongue. Starting with the very tip of your tongue, label that as A on your diagram. The sides of your tongue, just past A, label those B. On the further back section of your tongue, label that as C. And in the very back, all the way in the back, label that D. And those are the 4 sections of taste buds on our tongue. Now, each one of those areas are unique in finding out what kind of taste you're experiencing when you eat food. And those happen to be the major taste sensations are sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and then the big one in the middle, umami. And when you eat food, your tongue, your taste buds on those little sections pick up those little bits of taste sensation, and that's what you experience as sweet, sour, salty, bitter, or umami when you're eating food. Now, as an astronaut in outer space, you also eat your 3 meals a day just like you do here on Earth. Now, their taste sensations are different. Now, if you're able, I would encourage you to sort of stand on your head or sort of put your head upside down, and you'll feel as though the water is rushing up to your head, or if you're ever had a head cold, which I hope none of you have, a head cold, and you feel stuffy up here, like all the fluid is up in your head and your head feels like it's filled with fluid. That's what an astronaut feels, because when you're in outer space on the International Space Station, you are in free fall, where you feel like you're falling, and then the fluids will rise up in your body, and your head will feel like it's filled with water because of fluid dynamics. Now, the astronauts eat their astronaut food, but if you've ever eaten anything when you have a cold, taste is different. It's not as bright, it's not as good tasting as it normally would, or it's sort of buffered or masked. And that's what astronauts feel while in space. So if they're eating food, astronauts prefer things spicy and really flavorful. That's why they add things like sriracha or really hot sauce on their foods to help that sensation of greater taste come back to them while they're eating their astronaut food. So we're going to be doing an experiment today which allows us to experience different taste sensations on our tongue. And with this diagram that we drew of our tongue and the different regions, we're going to figure out which region goes with which taste sensation. And what you'll need to do is set up your experiment. So here's our experiment setup. I have set up various types of taste experiences, or it seemed to be a taste experience for me. I have lemon juice right here set up, which to me represents a sour taste. I have jelly beans next, which would to normally represent a sweet taste, and today happens to be National Jelly Bean Day. So that's another reason why I'm working with jelly beans. Next, I have the saltiness of a pretzel, and then the bitterness of cocoa powder. In this cup, I happen to have straws that I've cut so I can use the liquid to sort of add it to layers of my tongue, and some Q-tips to add some layers as well. And then a glass of water so that in between each one of the taste bud sampling areas, you can cleanse your palate, cleanse that taste off of your tongue with that glass of water. Also, I have here the map that we drew of our taste buds and then labeled here so we can fill in from what we conclude with filling in our data table. So with our data table, I have listed the regions A, B, C, and D, and also color-coded them so they match on the taste bud map. You can choose any color that you like to represent your taste bud palette for your data table. And then I went ahead and labeled sour, sweet, salty, and bitter as the 4 key tasting notes we're going to be looking for on those regions of our taste buds. And with data, the more data you have, the better your result. So with this table, I set up where there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different trials. So we're going to rate that of where you put that piece on your tongue to represent really weak flavor would be 1. And max flavor of that is super sour, that would be max of 5. And you'll do those 5 times with each one of your areas of the tongue. So let me show you the process of what it's like, and then that way we can do the experiment and then conclude from our data our taste region and what we can then label and confirm and conclude our taste regions of our tongue are based on our taste results. Let's get started. All right, it's experiment time. So with your experiment, have your samples of your different taste food items set out, and we're going to be tasting these like an astronaut would. And the easiest way to test like an astronaut would was to pinch your nose. Pinching your nose like this and tasting food makes the food taste strikingly different because your nose sense and your taste sense are connected to one another. So if you lose your sense of smell, that means your food will taste slightly different. So that will mimic what it's like to taste in space. So I have my first sample here of lemon juice, and I pulled out the straw. And I'm going to place this from our data table. We're going to start in region A, and region A happens to be the very tip of your tongue. So imagine you're blindfolded, and we're going to do the different regions. So we're going to start with the tip of the tongue, and add that to your tip of your tongue. Now notice I was holding the glass and holding the straw, so that was without holding my nose. So with these, you could do it to where you sample with holding your nose and without holding your nose to see the differences. So let me try it with holding my nose. It's not as sour without holding my nose. So you could write that in the notes section in your journal. Now, to me, I wrote down that is 4 because from our rating of 1 being weak and 5 being very strong sour, I labeled that one as a 4. So do that in that region A over and over and sort of sense if there's any change or difference with each one, and then rate all the way across. Next, go with your jelly beans. Do the same in that region. So rub that see if you have the taste sensation. Same with the salty pretzel and the bitterness of the cocoa powder. Rate those. Do that for each one of your regions, with A being the tip, B being the sides toward the front of your tongue, C being the back section of your tongue, and D all the way in the back. So do those, and with each one of your samples that you take, cleanse your palate with swish it around in your mouth and cleanse your palate so it doesn't skew your results. So at the very end, you can then determine which from the high rankings taste region you think corresponds with each one of the flavor palettes. So do that experiment, get your results, and then we're going to fill out our tongue map based on our results. So based off of our testing samples on our database, I have concluded the following regions of the tongue. A is sweet with our jelly bean sample. B is sour with the lemon juice sample. C is salty with the pretzel sample. D is bitter with the cocoa powder. Now the umami flavor, if you wanted to try that, you could do sort of like maybe a beef broth or miso paste or miso soup, things that have that different strong earthy flavor, or even mushrooms are an umami flavor. So try this at home and share your results in the comments below. And remember, never stop tasting, and science never stops.